My name is Robert Carter, as you know. I'm a speaker for Creation Ministries International. I'm going to be here today for 3 different lectures. This one on dinosaurs. Now, I am not a paleontologist, but I am a nerd, and I love fossils, and I love rocks, and I love studying about the world. We're going to come back for the next hour. I'm going to give a gospel presentation, and I'm going to try to show you how you can use an alternative to evolution called creation to share the gospel with people. And then tonight we're going to come back to my specialty, which is genetics. I am a geneticist. We're going to talk about Adam and Eve and what it means to us today. And were they real? Can we really show that Adam and Eve existed in genetics and things like that? It's going to be a lot of fun talking about human history, talk a lot about the Bible tonight. But this one, dinosaurs and the Bible. All I'm going to do is ask you questions. That's it. Let's see if we can answer the questions. And let's see if we can answer the questions biblically. Now, the thing here is what we're trying to do is we're testing to see if the Bible is a good guide to science and history. And in the end, if we say, yeah, the Bible does answer these questions, what can we conclude? The Bible's real. Now, let's not do that, though, until we go through the questions. So, first question for you. Which of these creatures had been on Earth the longest? The bird, the dinosaur, the dolphin, or the fish? Who says fish? Great, evolutionists. Oh. Wait a minute. Look at the question. It's a trick question. The question itself is assuming that some things have been on the earth longer than others, right? So what do? As Christians, when we see a question, we should stop and we should question the question. Because evolutionary theory absolutely says the fish comes first. And evolutionary theory says reptiles come next. And evolutionary theory says that birds and mammals evolved from reptiles. Well, I don't believe that. Is there another explanation for history? Yeah. If we look at the first page of our Bibles, we're given a very straightforward account of God creating everything in the universe on 6 consecutive days. True or false? That's up to us to decide, isn't it? We struggle with this. A lot of people really do. And I know in my life, I struggled with this for a long time before I accepted it as being true. But in this account, we've got all the flying creatures and all the swimming creatures being created on day 5 of Creation Week. That includes the bird, the dolphin, and the fish. And on the next day, God created all the land animals, which should include dinosaurs. Oh, that's very different, isn't it? There's no evolutionary order here. We'll get to that in the next lecture also. Next question. What is a dinosaur? I remember as a kid, I remember reading the stories in the Bible about people living to hundreds and hundreds of years. I said, oh, well, what if an iguana lived to like 600 years old? Would it morph into a T-Rex? The answer is absolutely not. Dinosaurs are different. Whether they stand up on 2 legs or 4 legs, they bear their weight, much like we do, upright. All the other reptiles alive today, except for the snakes, their legs stick out to the side. So your iguanas, your all sorts of lizards, your alligators, crocodiles, you name it, they have a different shape to the hip structure. So dinosaurs are a unique group of reptiles. Now, Bill, Marilee, is that a model of a big guy or is that a juvenile? This theropod here. Don't know. Okay, here's my point. That's a really neat, fascinating fossil. We have dinosaurs from the big ones to the little ones all the way to the babies that just hatch out of an egg. We know what they look like when they're babies. They look like little versions of the big ones. Here's a problem, though. That buried dinosaurs are all of the other reptiles you're familiar with. So the question is, what happened to the dinosaurs? What's the most common thing we hear about what happened to the dinosaurs? Big meteor hit the earth. Anybody know how long ago in the evolutionary model? 65 million years ago. Now, I don't believe the Earth's millions of years old, but let's just take 65 million as the evolutionary number just so we can talk about it. Big meteor hit the Earth, caused so much ash to go up into the atmosphere that it cooled the Earth off and killed the dinosaurs. but not the crocodiles, not the snakes, not the turtles, and not the butterflies. I have no idea how to answer that in an evolutionary scenario. It is a tremendous puzzle. Here's the funny thing. Nobody was there. Nobody saw it. So what do? We put on our thinking caps and we come up with ideas, but you know what? We can come up with an idea. It doesn't necessarily mean the idea is true. And when you test the idea, you often find, well, that doesn't really work. All right, next question for you. Who can name a species of dinosaur? Brontosaurus. Triceratops. Not pterodactylus. The pterosaurs are not dinosaurs. They have a different hip structure. They're another unique group of reptiles. The marine reptiles are also different, like air-breathing things that live in the water. They look like they're reptiles, but they don't have the hip structure. Another unique group. Cool. We're learning a lot here this morning, aren't we? Okay. I bet we could put like a couple of 10-year-olds here and all the rest of you together, and they could probably name more species of dinosaurs than you can. All right. Do you think maybe between us we could name 10 species of dinosaurs? You think maybe we get 20? Maybe? How many were there? Were there millions of species of dinosaurs? Actually, there's only a couple of hundred total. And yet when we look at them, when we classify them, look, this is some of the ceratopsid dinosaurs. There's 11 different genera there. How many species are there? Well, it would say 11. But here's the problem. They're all dead. We can't do breeding experiments with these guys. All of a sudden, we're raising a question here. The biologist, like myself, I have a different species definition than the geologist does. I say, if two things can interbreed, they're the same species. The geologist says, if two things look different, they're different species. I don't know. These guys aren't in a zoo. I do know this. How many species are standing here on the grass? That's the world's largest dog standing next to the world's smallest dog. I know that if geologists found the bones of these animals in a rock somewhere, they would claim that these guys are different species, different genera. They're the same family, they're both carnivores based on their teeth. But Charles Darwin told us that it takes millions of years because species change very slowly. But that's not true. Those are gray wolves. Look what we did to gray wolves in just a couple of hundred years. Because these breeds did not exist in the 1800s. Oh. So we have the biological criterion. If two things can interbreed, we know they're the same species. These guys are one species. Now they might have a problem and need a stepladder, but we're not going into that. If we look in the fossil record, we can actually get a good handle on most of the dinosaur diversity because there's only about 50 different types of dinosaur.
Wow.
Oh. Now within each type, there's many species sometimes. And most of these, interestingly, are herbivores. Almost all dinosaurs ate plants. Now, we've got Tyrannosaurus rex and Velociraptor, right? The supposed carnivores. Those are called the theropods. Those guys with those big back legs and those little front legs. Okay, the theropods. But look at Tyrannosaurus rex. He's a theropod. How would he have originally been described? Would he have been described as an herbivore eating plants, a carnivore eating meat, a scavenger eating whatever he can find, or an omnivore eating whatever he wants? Who says the carnivore, the fierce predator stalking the Mesozoic plains? What, are you afraid now because you think I'm going to contradict you? Yeah, absolutely. We must ask this trick question again. We must understand this is a trick question and ask a question in return. Originally described according to whom? I believe it was Othniel Marsh, discovered him in the 1800s, late 1800s, gave him the name Tyrant Lizard King, and described him as a fierce predator. Is it true or not? And how do we know? Or do we read the Bible that describes God creating everything to eat plants? This is God talking to Adam. I have given you every herb that yields seed which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed to you shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, dinosaurs, to every bird of the air, to everything that creeps on the earth in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food, and it was so. Okay, let me ask you a question, Christian. Does the Bible unequivocally say that God created all things to eat plants? Yes or no? Yes. Do we have a problem? Yes, because we know in the fossil record there are things that were eating meat. How do we reconcile that scripturally? The fall. What happened was Adam disobeyed God. He ate the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And because of that, God says things like, cursed is the ground because of you, and pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. You shall eat the plants of the field by the sweat of your face, etc., etc., etc. This is called the curse. This is a very important passage for biblical Christianity because this explains why there's suffering and death in the world. After creation, Charles Darwin looked at the fossil record. He saw carnivory and broken bones and maybe even cancer. He saw all these horrible things in the fossil record. And he said, how could a good and loving God have created that? But see, he got his cart before his horse. God did not create it that way. In fact, God blames it on man. But, this is funny. Everything I was taught about dinosaurs is wrong. Everything you've been taught about dinosaurs is wrong. Because things keep changing. In fact, this article we have on our website, with the claim that carnivorous dinosaurs had a plant diet. This is based on evolutionary work. Paleontology has realized that when you find a dinosaur, you don't just chisel the bone out of the rock and bring the rock back to your museum. No, what they're doing now is they're taking a huge section of the rock around the bone because associated with the bones are what they called ghost fossils. That is, when you look at the rock, you can often see a discoloration in the shape of the animal's body because he was in fact buried alive. You can often see preserved his heart, his liver, his stomach. And when scientists started looking at the stomach contents of dead dinosaurs, they realized that most of the theropods, that's the ones with the sharp teeth, actually their stomach is filled with plant material. What a surprise. So most of the theropods, even despite the way they're built, we know they were eating plants. Now, do we have a modern analog of this? Yes, we do. Very simply. What do black bears eat? They're herbivores, right? What do polar bears eat? Seals. They're carnivores. They have the same tools. They have the same claws as the black bear, the same nose. Their hair is different colored. Big deal. All they need is a mutation in the melanin-producing gene, and you can get a white bear very easily. In fact, I just saw this morning a picture of 2 white giraffes in Africa, out in the wild. Well, they're white. Okay, they're white people. Look at this right here. You know what that is? That's a mutation. This is not the original skin color of humanity. This is a mutation of the SLC45A gene on the end of chromosome 15. Okay, that's tonight. I want to introduce you to a term called exaptation. You've heard adaptation, right? Well, this is exaptation. That is, taking something that God initially designed and using it for what it wasn't designed for. You could use a screwdriver as a hammer, right? Now, it might not work in all circumstances, but there's sometimes you just pap, 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 it works just fine. The same way, those claws that black bears use to dig up roots are really good for grabbing a seal out of the ice. And those teeth that black bears use to strip blueberries off of branches, literally, they put the branch in their mouth, they go, whoop, and all blueberries come off. That's awesome. Those are really good for eating meat. It wasn't what they were initially created for. It's what they learned to do after the fall. And I believe that explains the carnivorous dinosaurs. But we know that dinosaurs are eating meat. We have lots of examples of this. This is a Tyrannosaurus rex tailbone. No, I'm sorry. A Tyrannosaurus rex tooth embedded in that duck-billed dinosaur's tailbone. But the dinosaur survived the T-Rex attack, and the bone healed up around that tooth, which meant he walked around the rest of his life in a lot of pain. because he had a tooth in his backbone. Ouch. But wait a second. Think about biblical history. We got creation. We have the flood. We have after the flood. But wait a second. If that's all true, and if God really did create dinosaurs and they really did live with man, then, well, dinosaurs would have been on the earth around the time of the flood. Right? Do we have any evidence for this? The answer is so much it's unbelievable. Here's one really excellent thing. You've seen pictures of dinosaurs in this pose before. The original Jurassic Park movie, opening scene, they go boom in the ground, this sonic thing, and they put up on a picture up on the television screen. Yeah, magic science. I love that, how they can do that so quick. Anyway, what they have a picture of a velociraptor just like this. Why, when most dinosaurs are not intact. Most of them are disassembled. But we do find hundreds, if not thousands, of intact dinosaur skeletons. And when they're intact, they're in this position. The paleontologist calls this the dead dinosaur posture. Why? When an animal dies outside, it doesn't go ugh, and lay there on the ground like that. What is this? Well, some scientists, I believe it was 2 summers ago, studying dead chickens, they realized that when you put a chicken in the water, its head does that. They said, what's going on? And what they did is they looked at the anatomy of animals with long necks and long tails. They usually have a thing called the ligamentum elasticum. That's the elastic ligament. It's a rubber band. It runs from the back of the skull, down the spine, and down the tail. So a long-necked animal doesn't need to use muscles to hold his head up. He's got a rubber band. So if this is his head and this is his neck, boing, 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 boing. That's brilliant. What an awesome anatomy. You don't have to hold your head up with muscles. You have a rubber band. Okay. What if you take that animal and drown him? Oh, he doesn't weigh as much in water, right? But the rubber band is still pulling with the same force. Boing. And that's what happened to the chickens. And now the evolutionary paleontologists are saying that the classic dead dinosaur posture is evidence of drowning. Wow. That's exactly what I would predict in a Noah's flood scenario. Huh. Now, are dinosaurs mentioned in the Bible? Maybe. The word certainly isn't in the Bible because, well, the word wasn't invented till the 1840s and at least 5 different English translations before that. But there's a word in the Hebrew Bible specifically. It's called tanin. Now, sometimes it's translated jackal. Sometimes it's translated sea monster. Depends on your translation. In fact, jackal is about the worst translation. It really bugs me that that's in there. But the word tanin basically means big lizardy monster thing. Or, in modern word, dragon. There are dragon stories and dragon accounts from major world cultures all over the world. Now, if I was going to invent a horror story, I would talk about the giant wolf that came and ate the neighborhood. I wouldn't talk about the little fence lizard that grew to 50 feet long and ate the neighborhood. So it's really weird that all these cultures have stories of big lizards. Well, weird, that is, if they really did die out millions of years ago. But if they didn't die out millions of years ago, there's a pretty good reason for that being true, because people did see them and they did remember them. Now, in the Bible, this is all true. We'd expect dinosaur accounts in the Bible. Well, there aren't any dinosaur accounts in the Bible. There are a couple of places, however, that are really odd. Look at Job chapter 40. This is God chastising Job for all these things that Job doesn't know. And it's all scientific things. Do you know where the snow is stored in the sky and all those sorts of questions? And he goes, behold, behemoth. Now stop. Is behemoth an English word? It's a Hebrew word. Why did they transliterate it? Why didn't they translate it? Well, because it's kind of hard to translate. It means beast of beasts. Behold the beast of beasts, which I made as I made you. I believe that's a reference to Creation Week, day 6. He eats grass. Oh, he's an herbivore. Cool. He's strong. He's got strength in his loins and power in his muscles, and he makes his tail stiff like a cedar. That's really odd. Why did God use that word? There's 40 different trees mentioned in the Old Testament. Oak, acacia, palm. Why did he put cedar? Well, the cedars are the biggest trees in the Middle East. They're not the biggest trees in Florida. You probably got some scrubby little cedar trees growing up in old fields and places around here, right? That's what we in Georgia. Cedar trees are not big in Georgia. But the cedar trees are the largest trees in the Middle East. So in an American context here, if God had said, he's got a tail like a sequoia, what does that tell you? He's got the biggest tail. Now, I don't know, and we cannot absolutely know, that Job 40 is talking about a sauropod dinosaur. However, the largest land animals that God created deserve the title beasts of beasts. They were herbivores, they were really strong, and had a really big tail. That's a really good candidate right there for a sauropod dinosaur. But wait a second. If Job saw dinosaurs, then dinosaurs were on Noah's Ark, because Job is after the flood. Is that possible? Does Noah have a problem? How do we get a dinosaur that would have a hard time fitting in his room onto an ark? Well, there's multiple different ways we can do that. First of all, we have to acknowledge that within each group of dinosaurs, those 50 groups of dinosaurs, there are large species and small species. Yeah, there's T-Rex. Okay, he's really big. But within the theropods, those little guys, here's Compsognathus. He's chicken sized. When he's an adult, he's full grown. He's not big. So God could have brought the smaller versions to Noah. Or, because dinosaurs come from eggs, and the largest dinosaur egg ever discovered is about the size or smaller than an ostrich egg, he could have brought hatchlings. He could have brought juveniles. He could have brought teenagers. He didn't have to take great-great-great-great-granddaddy Apatosaurus, who's monstrous in size and near the end of his life. But we can also figure out about how many dinosaurs he would have had to take. How many dinosaurs do you think were on Noah's Ark? Well, if there's 50 basic kinds, and Noah took 2 of each kind, what's 50 times 2? About 100 dinosaurs. Oh, that's not that big a deal, is it? No, not at all. But also, Noah's Ark is gigantic. Even if he had to take the largest versions of the largest species of the largest dinosaurs, there's still room. Now, again, I don't necessarily know the answer because I wasn't there to see it. But I just gave you 2 or 3 possible answers, and if any one of those is true, problem solved. Okay? We like that kind of reasoning? I don't like being dogmatic on something I can't be dogmatic on. But I do like having answers to things that I can't quite know perfectly, if that makes sense. Oh, I'm a scientist after all. We are trained. You realize a scientist is trained that no matter what they say, they can't be caught lying? You realize that, right? The way we are trained is such that we use words and phrases that even if we're wrong later on, oh no, I wasn't wrong. I said, according to our theory, or this is what we now believe, and all these little catchphrases. So as a person, I don't like saying, this is absolutely true, because you know what? It might not be. We got to be careful with our language, and I think we would all benefit if we're careful with our language. Okay, so what did happen to the dinosaurs? Would it surprise you to learn that all the largest land animals that ever existed have now gone extinct? All of them. Why? Well, to be big, you need a lot of food. You're always at a greater risk of dying from starvation. To be big, you can't handle climate changes. And we know the climate cycles. Absolutely, the climate cycles. Big animals don't deal with that very well. Also, to be big means you wait longer before you have any offspring, and you're a lot more likely to die over those years you're waiting than like a mouse. Mice will never go extinct. Elephants probably will, and everything larger than an elephant already is. So just ecologically, I think we can explain the disappearance of dinosaurs just because of their size. But there is evidence that we did live with them. Let me give you one of my favorite examples. This is the tomb of a bishop who died in England 600 years ago. People were walking across his grave, For 6 centuries, we didn't discover dinosaurs until 200 years ago. Way before the discovery of the dinosaurs. Now, carved into this brass square that goes, a rectangle that goes around his tomb, are these animals. Now look, there's a bat, there's a dog, there's a fish, there's a bird. Does anyone disagree with me on those? Anybody else think there's something else being pictured? In fact, it's not just that. That's a wading bird. That's a running dog. That's probably a carp, and I don't know what species of bat that is, but it's, so whoever carved these things knew what they were carving, correct? So then why is it that right near there, there's this picture, where it looks like 2 sauropod dinosaurs with their necks wrapped around each other. And the guy on the left has spikes on his tail. There's only one species of sauropod dinosaur we've discovered that has spikes on his tail. Oh, wow. And nearby to that is this thing. I don't know what that is, but it's not a pig. That looks sort of like a stegosaur without any spikes on its back. Remember the picture I showed you earlier of all the ceratopsid dinosaurs? Some had big horn, some had 3, some had 1, some had a lot, some had a big frill, some had a little frill. A lot of diversity in there, right? We don't have many stegosaurs. Some of them have plates, some of them have spikes, some of them have little spikes. It wouldn't surprise me if we discovered a stegosaur one day that actually didn't have anything on his back. Because within each group of dinosaurs, there's a lot of diversity. But the funny thing is that this 2 sauropod dinosaurs with their necks wrapped around each other is a real common theme in ancient history. We see it a lot. In fact, the proportions of these animals here, that looks like Tanystropheus. There's a sauropod dinosaur that has a really long neck like that and a really long tail, and that's really odd. If I was inventing a mythological creature, I might get that bird-like thing there. It's kind of, who knows what that is, but I'd have a hard time drawing a picture of something that really did live. Oh. Here's one of my favorites. There's a temple complex buried in the jungles of Cambodia. About 1500 AD, the Khmer Empire collapsed, and this whole city basically got covered in jungle. And we've gone back there recently, and we've hacked away the jungle. In fact, there's a reproduction of this right there in the middle of this table. All these things carved in this temple. People, water buffaloes, horses, and what do you think that is? It looks like a stegosaurus. Now, people argue, no, it's not really a stegosaur, but you know what? That really does look like a stegosaur. In fact, recently, someone discovered another one. Close by on a different wall, another looks very much like a stegosaurus. Did people know what stegosaurs look like? That's not possible, is it? Stegosaurs supposedly died out 65 million years ago, right? At the end of the age of dinosaurs, right? Look at this. We've seen pictures like this. No mammals, no birds, no grass. That's all wrong. This whole idea of the age of dinosaurs is actually an imagination of the paleontologists from 100 years ago. And everything you think or that you were trained or taught growing up about the age of dinosaurs actually has been contradicted. And this whole idea needs to be thrown away. I remember when I was a young man, I was absolutely convinced that evolution was true. I would have said evolution is a fact, because I thought I was a little science nerd and I was a scientist and I was going to believe what scientists said. I didn't realize that scientists were people and they could make mistakes. I didn't realize that scientists were biased and bigoted. I didn't realize that scientists sometimes made stuff up. But I saw the family tree like this of all the dinosaurs. Look at that. It goes all the way back to a common ancestor at the bottom. Isn't that proof of evolution right there? Well, actually, no, because if you cover up everything they don't know, you're left with 50 family sticks. Oh. You've heard the phrase missing link, right? Between man and monkeys? You've heard that phrase? Well, have you realized that there's missing links between almost every major group of animal and almost every other major group of animal throughout the entire fossil record? It's not just between man and monkeys, but it's between everything. There's no evidence of evolution of dinosaurs. They appear and then they disappear. They might vary within their little group, but they don't translate or transition between one group and another. That's not the way it's supposed to be, and it's not what I was taught. Plus, buried with dinosaurs are lots of other animals. They've discovered something that looks like a flying squirrel. Now, it's not a modern flying squirrel. It's a different group of mammals that are now extinct. It's called a multituberculate. They got a bunch of bumps in their teeth, tubercles all over their teeth. But those animals, those mammals that live with dinosaurs were very diverse, and one of them looks sort of like a flying squirrel. That second picture, it's a platypus. Now, that looks just like a modern platypus. It's only twice as big as the modern guy. You see that groove in the jaw? That's for the giant nerve that runs to the bill that they use to detect electrical things underwater when they can't see anything. And those are platypus teeth. So platypuses live with dinosaurs. But look at the date, 120 MA. MA is mega animal, millions of years ago. 120 millions of years ago, that means that platypuses live with dinosaurs for 60 million years. That's before the time when most of the dinosaurs supposedly evolved. Now granted, again, I'm using evolutionary numbers, right? I don't think the Earth is that old, but I like using their numbers and I like knowing what they're talking about. Here's a badger, or something that looks like a badger. Supposedly 130 million years ago, he died with a baby Psittacosaurus in his stomach. So on the morning of Noah's flood, 4,500, 4,600 years ago, that mammal ate a dinosaur for breakfast. Cool. There's a beaver-like creature, supposedly predates extinction of dinosaurs by 100 million years. Wait a minute, this is not supposed to be true. In fact, he's buried and preserved with his hairs. Hair can be preserved in rocks? Yeah, because that next one, he looks just like a hedgehog. Hedgehogs are very distinctive animals. They have a unique hair. No other animal has a hedgehog hair. You know what a hedgehog looks like. It looks like a porcupine, but they're not prickly, right? At least they don't hurt you when you touch their stiff hairs. Well, this guy is the size of a hedgehog, the shape of a hedgehog, and his hair's like a hedgehog. I do believe that hedgehogs were living with dinosaurs. And I think that's the evidence right there. And look at this guy, an amazing fossil. There's these things way back in the fossil record. You've seen pictures of Dimetrodon. It's a thing that looks sort of like an alligator, but he's got a big old sail on his back. They're called the mammal-like reptiles. Well, here's a problem. The more we learn about these supposed mammal-like reptiles, we realize that they're less and less reptile-like and more mammal-like. This guy here is a mammal. He's got mammal teeth. Look at his teeth. See at the top there? He's got a mammal tail, mammal bones, mammal shoulder joints and hip joints, and this guy's a mammal. But based on where they found it, they had to conclude that mammals must have existed in the late Triassic. Okay, what is that? All right, let me give you an example here. You've all seen the movie Jurassic Park? You ever realize that all those animals are Cretaceous? It just drives me nuts that they just throw their terms out and they throw them out like crazy and we don't even know what they're talking about. Let me hear. These red lines, I got them from that other family tree I showed you of the dinosaurs. Literally, I drew red lines on top of things and I shoved everything to the left. That is evolutionary time, right? 65 million years ago when dinosaurs die out. We got the Mesozoic era before that, which is composed of the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous, when most of the dinosaurs lived. We okay so far? I was taught, even up through graduate school, and I got out in 2003, that yeah, there are a few mammals that live with dinosaurs. They're rat-like little things, just little small things. And there were a few birds that lived with dinosaurs at the end of the dinosaur era. And after the dinosaurs died out, that's when the mammals expanded, took over the world. And that's when the birds diversified into all the modern birds. You've heard that? Something like that, maybe? It's not true, but you've heard it? Yeah, that last picture I just showed you, that would put the mammals way back there in the Triassic, which means they lived the whole time dinosaurs were alive. But birds, too. Here's this Confuciusornis. That black stuff is preserved feathers. Yes, feathers can be preserved in rocks. He's got a claw on his wing, okay. But he's got a beak. He's got long tail feathers, just like a bird. But here's a modern bird that has claws on his wings. It's called the hoatzin, or the stink bird of South America. The babies have perfectly functional wing claws, and they scuttle all over trees, holding onto the trees with their claws. Oh, that's kind of cool. Here's another ancient bird, Hungshonornis. Notice a lot of these ancient birds have Chinese names. I'll tell you why in a minute. This guy at the top, he has a bill. At the bottom, do you see that brown smile in the rocks? You know what that is? That looks like the color from the end of his tail feathers. Oh, that's cool. But look at the date again. 125 million years ago? That means birds lived with dinosaurs 60 million years before dinosaurs died out, supposedly 65 million years ago. Look at this guy. Anchiornis huxleyi. Now they split the rock, and this is the left and right hand part of the same fossil. This is critically important. About the year 2000-ish, maybe 99, maybe 2001, I don't remember. I got National Geographic, and on the cover was a feathered dinosaur they had discovered in China. And what a fossil, wow. And I'm like, oh, this is a challenge, I don't know, what do I do with this? Well, they had bought this from a person in China who had actually broken the fossil and glued a reptile fossil and a bird fossil together. And yes, they issued a retraction, it was this big, a couple editions later. Okay, we shouldn't have done that. It was a huge media splash, and one scientist said, I don't know about this. So he went back to China, to the quarry where the thing was found, and he searched around, and he found what's called the counter slab. And when he looked at this half of the fossil versus the one they published, he realized they didn't match, and it was a forgery. But look at Anchiornis. Can you see the feathers? They have feathers, right? Here's another one. They just discovered, this just got published like 2 months ago. Cruralispenia multidonta. That's a pile of feathers with some bones in it. That's really cool. Now, I don't know why the sound's doing that, by the way. I thought it was me, but it's not me. So can you all hear that feedback? All right, we're just going to ignore that. I'm having a hard time ignoring it. But, okay, look at it again. This is our fossil record, evolutionary time on the left. That's when the evolutionists now saying mammals live. And I put birds there with a question mark because we don't have many, because we keep discovering more, and because the time of birds keeps on getting extended. If birds evolved from dinosaurs, when? The evolutionists might have run out of time, and that's really, really funny. But let's ask this, my last question for you. Did dinosaurs have feathers? If you ask me that, I'm going to say, I don't know. And in one sense, I don't care, because the Bible does not say dinosaurs did not have feathers. Right? On the other sense, I want to know, because I'm a nerdy scientist and I like to dig into things. Do they have feathers or not? Well, here's some evidence. This is Sinosauropteryx. This is the poster child of the feathered dinosaurs. You see that brown, smudgy stuff that runs down his back? That was the first feathered dinosaur discovered, and they said, look at that, dinosaurs had feathers. Yeah. A couple years ago, some other scientists looking at the same exact fossil, they looked at it and they said, wait a minute, we can see the skin. That brown stuff is underneath the animal's skin. And I quote, and it is obvious to anyone who looks. Why was it not obvious to the first scientists who looked at it? Because they wanted to prove that dinosaurs had feathers. Now, I tell you what, I would be fine if they have feathers. It's fine with me, but I'm not quite convinced. Here's another paper came out recently. This is Tyrannosaurus rex. You know we have petrified dinosaur skin. You know that, right? Lots of petrified dinosaur skin. So they looked at 3 different places in a T-Rex, and all they saw was scales. There's no evidence of feathers on a T-Rex. Worse, that is where almost all the feathered dinosaur fossils are found. This is a very small location in the world, one particular quarry. In fact, there's one village that's doing most of the work. These people go and they crack rocks open because they know if they find a good one, they can make a lot of money by selling it. And every example of a feathered dinosaur that I'm aware of, one scientist's name appears on all of the papers. That is a scary proposition. The same scientist has claimed to have found feathered dinosaur stuff in amber and all sorts of other claims this person is making. And I'm sorry, as a scientist, when one person is involved in all the discoveries, That's a recipe for disaster. And we've seen that many times in scientific history. So I'm advising caution, but I'm not saying that dinosaurs did not have feathers, because I don't know yet, but I'm not convinced. Okay? All right, now put all that aside. That's a bunch of complicated, I worked through that with a lot of tiptoeing through some issues. But what if I could show you that dinosaur fossils can't be millions of years old? If that's true, then evolution is impossible. So let's just end with that. There's a electron microscope images that two friends of mine took, Armitage and Anderson, got published in an evolutionary journal called Acta Histochemica, very famous old journal. This is the inside of a Triceratops horn. Now those upper two pictures, those delicate branching bone structures, they turn to powder over time. In the middle on the right, see those two blobs with the spikes? Those are osteoblasts. Those are skin cells. Sorry. Those are bone cells. I don't know why I said skin. Those are bone cells intact, which makes no sense in an evolutionary time frame. Because these things should not exist after 65 million years in a non-petrified state. The inside of the horn had not been fossilized, petrified. It was the original material. Worse, this is a Tyrannosaurus rex leg bone. It was more than 10 years ago that this was discovered. This is pliable, stretchy material, blood vessels, red blood cells. In fact, it still stinks. Don't tell anybody, but it still stinks. I can't leave a ham sandwich on the counter for a week before it starts turning green. You think I could take a pig and bury it in my backyard for 100 years and find my pig again? How about 1,000 years? How about millions of years? No. The only way to get preservation of something like this is if it wasn't buried millions of years ago. In fact, I am skeptical. I am having a hard time accepting this because I think this guy died 4,500 years ago. That's a long time for rotting to happen. But if I'm skeptical, what does the evolutionists say? They believe this guy died 65, 70 million years ago. What do they say? Well, perhaps we don't understand the process of tissue breaking down over time. Wait a second. That's a science. It's called taphonomy. People have been studying things rotting for well over 100 years. If they didn't, we wouldn't have CSI Miami. Okay, ridiculous show, I know. But we know because we've been studying decay for a long time. It's a fascinating, disgusting science. These guys aren't millions of years old, according to everything we know in the field of taphonomy. Even better, the same laboratory published this a couple years ago. Those are cells. Those are cells from a dinosaur. Wait a second. That means it's not petrified. And the cells still exist? They didn't break down? Yeah. So they stain the cells, but the stain only stains DNA. I've used the stain in my laboratory. I know how it works. I know the chemistry of it. I know you need intact, coiled up DNA. But DNA doesn't last for millions of years. It breaks down quickly. And when they stained it, look at that. It lit up what looks like, see those two little green spots? The nucleus is intact. Oh. And the DNA is still inside the nucleus. Oh. But bacteria have DNA. And if there's organic material in this bone, there should be bacteria in the bone eating it. Maybe that's bacteria. Well, that's what the other two pictures are for, with the two red dots. They also stain the cells with a stain for a protein that bacteria don't have. But you have it, and reptiles have it. It's called a histone. It's the protein the DNA wraps around inside the nucleus. And look at that. It lit up what looks like, see the two red spots? It looks like a nucleus, meaning the DNA really is still intact. I am stunned. If this is true, evolution is not true, because the millions of years are not possible. So did dinosaurs have feathers or not? I don't know. Did birds evolve from dinosaurs? No, because evolution has no time for evolution to happen. Oh. Now, I skipped over a few things in my lecture, so this might not look perfect, but follow this line of thought. Dinosaurs tell us about God's creativity. God is an engineering master. In order to make something whose back would be as high as the ceiling, be able to walk and his legs not break, whoa, that is an engineering triumph. Plus, we learn about all the different types of things God's created. Dinosaurs are fun to study. But dinosaurs also tell us about the fall. We have animals who were originally created to eat plants, who some of them turned to start eating meat. What is that? That's how the curse started to work out in the world after Adam rebels against God. We also have tons and tons and tons of dinosaurs that were obviously buried in, or killed and drowned and buried in a worldwide catastrophe, what we would call this flood. But since some dinosaurs apparently were on the ark, because some dinosaurs apparently lived on the earth after the flood, dinosaurs also tell us about God's judgment, but not just judgment, providence. He provided a way of escape for Noah and the passengers on board the ark. Now, that doesn't mean that all species would be existing today, because we're still under the curse and we're still under judgment, and things still do die. But when you put all those things together, creation, the fall, and providence, a way of escape, that's the gospel. Why am I sick and suffering and hurting today? Well, because your ancestor Adam rebelled against God. And you know the antidote to this? Actually, faith in Jesus Christ. Because the way of escape, the way of salvation, the way to get rid of this mortal flesh is through faith in the God of creation. Now, I stumbled through that a little bit. I'm sure I could do a better job, and I probably should have done a better job. But do you get my point? When we talk to people about the Bible, we're actually talking to them about how to believe the Bible. And belief in the Bible leads to Jesus. This is not about rocks. It's not about data. That's worthless. If I was up here just talking about, oh, look at this interesting thing in science and this interesting thing in science, I'd be completely wasting all of our time. The goal of a Christian, the purpose of a Christian, is to testify for the work done in our lives by our Savior, correct? And so often when people are rejecting what we're saying because of evolution, if we have a little thing we can, well, wait a minute, what about this? And we can share it with them, that's often a very powerful testimony. Now I'm going to leave you, supposed to stop in 2 minutes. I didn't show you that one, I didn't show you that. I just ran out of time. There's just so much fascinating stuff. Let me point you to a couple of books back there. Awesome book, Untold Secrets of Planet Earth, Dire Dragons. This author, who's now a friend of mine, he went all around the world taking pictures of dragon artwork and carvings and paintings. And then he had an artist draw a picture of a known species of dinosaur in the same pose as what's in the artwork. That's profound. That was a very interesting book. There's another book next to it called Untold Secrets of Planet Earth, Flood Fossils. I think I learned more about fossils in that book than any other book on fossils or history that I've read. There's some really amazing pictures in both of these books. Here's a kid's book, Exploring Geology with Mr. Hibb. It helps children work through some of the questions that they have. I can guarantee you that any child, even before the age of 5 or at least 10, they've heard millions of years, they've heard evolution, because it's in the culture and you can't escape it. And when they hear it, they usually just accept it as being true. So we're already setting children up early on to have a giant contention with the Bible. Because if you say, oh, little Johnny, just read your Bible, he's going to read the first couple pages and say, this is not what I learned in school. Which one of these is right? And it happens early. This is a great book to helping kids work through some of those issues. And I'm going to leave you with this. 1 Peter 3:15. In your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect. And that last part is really important. I hope you didn't see any snarkiness in me, and I hope you might have a little bit of sarcasm, only kind of in jest. I don't try to be sarcastic on purpose. Because to be a jerk means you might not be representing Jesus very well. And we've got to be really careful with our words and the way we talk to people. And I'm going to tell you what, most people, if you start sharing the gospel with them, they're going to say, yeah, what about? And probably 8 out of 10 times, millions of years, evolution, dinosaurs, radiometric dating, something about evolution is going to come up. How do we answer it? We study. And hopefully we can do a better job next time than we did last time. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for dinosaurs. They are a challenge. They are a mystery, but they're also a joy to learn about. Thank you, Father, that you gave them to us, that we can turn this around and use them to talk to other people about you and your creative genius and your handiwork and the fall and the flood and the gospel of Jesus. But Lord, we're not equipped. Most of us, in fact, me included, we don't know as much as we should. We haven't taken the time really to learn some things. But Lord, the questions are right there in front of us. Help us to be encouraged and motivated to learn just a little bit more and to turn that around and share it with other people. Nothing else, just to glorify you. Thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for inquiring minds and happy hearts resting in your grace. Help us, Father, to be good witnesses to you this coming week. Amen.